time for Atomic Julie's Galactic Bedtime Stories. Classic era public domain sci-fi stories from Project Gutenberg. Enjoy. The Ego Machine. The finale. Written by Henry Kuttner, read by Julie Hoverson, as found on Project Gutenberg. Martin suddenly remembered something. He faced the robot. "Wait," he said. "You don't understand. I can't eye print that thing. It won't work on me. Don't you realize that? It's supposed to take the eye print of the rod and cone pattern of the retina," the robot said. So how can it do that unless I can keep my eye open for 20 seconds? My perceptive reaction thresholds are Ivan's, aren't they? I can't control the reflex of blinking. I've got a coward's synapses, and they'd force me to shut my eyes tight the second that gimmick got too close to them. "Hold them open," the robot suggested, "with your fingers." "My fingers have reflexes too," Martin argued, moving toward a sideboard. "There's only one answer. I've got to get drunk. If I'm half stupefied with liquor, my reflexes will be so slow I won't be able to shut my eyes. And don't try to use force either. If I drop dead with fear, how could you get my eye print then?" "Very easily," the robot said. "I'd pry open your lids." Martin hastily reached for a bottle on the sideboard and a glass. But his hand swerved aside and gripped, instead, a siphon of soda water. "Only," ENIAC went on, "the forgery might be detected." Martin fizzled the glass full of soda and took a long drink. "I won't be long getting drunk," he said, his voice thickening. "In fact, it's beginning to work already. See, I'm cooperating." The robot hesitated. "Well, hurry up about it," he said and sat down. Martin, about to take another drink, suddenly paused, staring at ENIAC. Then with a sharply indrawn breath, he lowered the glass. "What's the matter now?" the robot asked. "Drink your... what is it?" "It's whiskey," Martin told the inexperienced automaton. "But now I see it all. You've put poison in it. So that's your plan, is it? Well, I won't touch another drop, and now you'll never get my eye print. I'm no fool." "Cog almighty," the robot said, rising. "You poured that drink yourself. How could I have poisoned it? Drink." "I won't," Martin said with a coward's stubbornness, fighting back the growing suspicion that the drink might really be toxic. "You swallow that drink," ENIAC commanded, his voice beginning to quiver slightly. "It's perfectly harmless." "Then prove it," Martin said cunningly. "Would you be willing to switch classes? Would you drink this poisoned brew yourself?" "How do you expect me to drink?" the robot demanded. He paused. "All right, hand me the glass," he said. "I'll take a sip. Then you've got to drink the rest of it." "Aha!" Martin said. "You betrayed yourself that time. You're a robot. You can't drink. Remember? Not the same way I can, anyhow. Now I've got you trapped, you assassin. There's your brew." He pointed to a floor lamp. "Do you dare to drink with me now in your electrical fashion, or do you admit that you are trying to poison me?" "Wait a minute. What am I saying? That wouldn't prove a—" "Of course it would," the robot said hastily. "You're perfectly right, and it's very cunning of you. We'll drink together, and that will prove your whiskey's harmless. So you'll keep on drinking till your reflexes slow down, see?" "Well," Martin began uncertainly, but the unscrupulous robot unscrewed a bulb from the floor lamp, pulled the switch, and inserted his finger into the empty socket, which caused a crackling flash. "There," the robot said. "It isn't poisoned, see?" "You're not swallowing it," Martin said suspiciously. "You're holding it in your mouth, your finger." ENIAC again probed the socket. "Well, all right, perhaps," Martin said in a doubtful fashion. "But I'm not going to risk your slipping a powder in my liquor, you traitor. You're going to keep up with me drink for drink until I can eye print that gimmick of yours, or else I stop drinking." "But does sticking your finger in that lamp really prove my liquor isn't poisoned? I can't quite—" "Of course it does," the robot said quickly. "I'll prove it. I'll do it again." "Powerful DC, isn't it? Certainly it proves it. Keep drinking now." His gaze watchfully on the robot, Martin lifted his glass of club soda. cried the robot, some time later, sketching a singularly loose smile on its metallic face. Best fermented mammoth's milk I ever tasted, Martin agreed, lifting his 10th glass of soda water. He felt slightly queasy and wondered if he might be drowning. Mammoth's milk? Asked ENIAC thickly. What year is this? Martin drew a long breath. Ivan's capacious memory had served him very well so far. Voltage, he recalled, increased the frequency of the robot's thought patterns and disorganized ENIAC's memory, which was being proved before his eyes. But the crux of his plan was yet to come. The year of the Great Hairy One, of course, Martin said briskly. Don't you remember? Then you... ENIAC strove to focus upon his drinking companion. You must be Mammoth Slayer. That's it, Martin cried. Have another jolt. What about giving me the treatment now? What treatment? Martin looked impatient. You said you were going to impose the character matrix of Mammoth Slayer on my mind. You said that would ensure my optimum ecological adjustment in this temporal phase, and nothing else would. Did I? But you're not Mammoth Slayer, ENIAC said confusedly. Mammoth Slayer was the son of the Great Hairy One. What's your mother's name? The Great Hairy One, Martin replied, at which the robot grated its hand across its gleaming forehead. Have one more jolt, Martin suggested. Now take out the ecologizer and put it on my head. Like this? ENIAC asked, obeying. I keep feeling I have forgotten something important. Martin adjusted the crystal helmet on his skull. Now, he commanded, give me the character matrix of Mammoth Slayer, son of the Great Hairy One. Well, all right, ENIAC said dizzily. The red ribbons swirled. There was a flash from the helmet. There, the robot said. It's done. It may take a few minutes to begin functioning, but then for 12 hours you'll... Wait, where are you going? But Martin had already departed. The robot stuffed the helmet and the quarter-mile of red ribbon back for the last time. He lurched to the floor lamp, muttering something about one for the road. Afterward, the room lay empty. A fading murmur said, Pfft. Nick, Erica gasped, staring at the figure in the doorway. Don't stand like that, you frighten me. Everyone in the room looked up abruptly at her cry, and so were just in time to see a horrifying change take place in Martin's shape. It was an illusion, of course, but an alarming one. His knees slowly bent until he was half crouching, his shoulders slumped as though bowed by the weight of enormous back and shoulder muscles, and his arms swung forward until the knuckles hung perilously near the floor. Nicholas Martin had at last achieved a personality whose ecological norm would put him on a level with Raoul St. Cyr. Nick? Erica quavered. Slowly Martin's jaw protruded till his lower teeth were hideously visible. Gradually his eyelids dropped until he was peering up out of tiny wicked sockets. Then slowly, a perfectly shocked grin broadened Mr. Martin's mouth. Erica, he said throatily. Mine! And with that he shambled forward, seized the horrified girl in his arms, and bit her on the ear. Oh, Nick, Erica murmured, closing her eyes. Why didn't you ever... No, Nick, stop it. The contract release. We've got to... Nick, what are you doing? She snatched at Martin's departing form, but too late. For all his ungainly and unpleasant gait, Martin covered ground fast. Almost instantly he was clambering over Watt's desk as the most direct route to that startled tycoon. Dee Dee looked on, a little surprised. St. Cyr lunged forward. In Mixolydia, he began. Ha! So! He picked up Martin and threw him across the room. Oh, you beast! Erica cried, and flung herself upon the director, beating at his brawny chest. On second thought, she used her shoes on his shins with more effect. St. Cyr, no gentleman, turned her around, pinioned her arms behind her, and glanced up at Watt's alarmed cry. Martin, what are you doing? There was reason for his inquiry. Apparently unhurt by St. Cyr's toss, Martin had hit the floor, rolled over and over like a ball, knocked down a floor lamp with a crash, and uncurled with an unpleasant expression on his face. He rose crouching, bandy-legged, his arms swinging low, a snarl curling his lips. "You take my mate?" the pithecanthropic Mr. Martin inquired throatily, rapidly losing all touch with the 20th century. It was a rhetorical question. He picked up the lamp standard. He did not have to bend to do it, tore off the silk shade as he would have peeled foliage from a tree limb, and balanced the weapon in his hand. Then he moved forward, carrying the lamp standard like a spear. "I," said Martin, "kill." He then endeavored, with the most admirable single-heartedness, to carry out his expressed intention. The first thrust of the blunt improvised spear rammed into St. Cyr's solar plexus and drove him back against the wall with a booming thud. This seemed to be what Martin wanted. Keeping one end of the spear pressed into the director's belly, he crouched lower, dug his toes into the rug, and did his very best to drill a hole in St. Cyr. "Stop it!" cried Watt, flinging himself into the conflict. Ancient reflexes took over. Martin's arm shot out. Watt shot off in the opposite direction. The lamp broke. Martin looked pensively at the pieces, tentatively began to bite one, changed his mind, and looked at St. Cyr instead. The gasping director, mouthing threats, curses, and objections, drew himself up and shook a huge fist at Martin. "I," he announced, "shall kill you with my bare hands. Then I go over to MGM with Didi, in Mixolydia." Martin lifted his own fists toward his face. He regarded them. He unclenched them slowly, while a terrible grin spread across his face. And then, with every tooth showing, and with the hungry gleam of a mad tiger in his tiny little eyes, he lifted his gaze to St. Cyr's throat. Mammoth Slayer was not the son of the great hairy one for nothing. Martin sprang. So did St. Cyr, in another direction, screaming with sudden terror. For after all, he was only a medievalist. The feudal man is far more civilized than the so-called man of Mammoth Slayer's primordially direct era. And as a man recoils from a small but murderous wildcat, so St. Cyr fled in sudden civilized horror from an attacker who was, literally, afraid of nothing. He sprang through the window and, shrieking, vanished into the night. Martin was taken by surprise. When Mammoth Slayer leapt at an enemy, the enemy leapt at him too, and so Martin's head slammed against the wall with disconcerting force. Dimly he heard diminishing, terrified cries. Laboriously he crawled to his feet and sat back against the wall, snarling, quite ready. "Nick!" Erica's voice called. "Nick, it's me! Stop it! Stop it! Didi!" "Ugh!" Martin said thickly, shaking his head. "Kill!" He growled softly, blinking through red-rimmed little eyes at the scene around him. It swam back slowly into focus. Erica was struggling with Didi near the window. "You let me go!" Didi cried. "Where Raoul goes, I go!" "Didi!" pleaded a new voice. Martin glanced aside to see Tolliver Watt crumpled in a corner, a crushed lampshade half obscuring his face. With a violent effort, Martin straightened up. Walking upright seemed unnatural somehow, but it helped submerge Mammoth Slayer's worst instincts. Besides, with St. Cyr gone, stresses were slowly subsiding, so that Mammoth Slayer's dominant trait was receding from the active foreground. Martin tested his tongue cautiously, relieved to find he was still capable of human speak. He said. What?" Watt blinked at him anxiously through the lampshade. Release," Martin said with a violent effort. "Contract release! Gimme!" Watt had courage. He crawled to his feet, removing the lampshade. "Contract release!" he snapped. "You madman! Don't you realize what you've done? Didi's walking out on me. Didi, don't go! We will bring Raoul back." "Raoul told me to quit if he quit," Didi said stubbornly. "You don't have to do what St. Cyr tells you," Erica said, hanging on to the struggling star. "Don't I?" Didi asked, astonished. "Yes, I do. I always have." "Didi," Watt said frantically, "I'll give you the finest contract on Earth, a 10-year contract. Look, here it is." He tore out a well-creased document. "All you have to do is sign and you can have anything you want. Wouldn't you like that?" "Oh, yes," Didi said. "But Raoul wouldn't like it." She broke free from Erica. "Martin!" Watt told the playwright frantically. "Get St. Cyr back. Apologize to him. I don't care how, but get him back. If you don't, I'll never give you your release." Martin was observed to slump slightly, perhaps with hopelessness. Then again, perhaps not. "I'm sorry," Dee Dee said. "I liked working for you, Tolliver, but I have to do what Raoul says, of course." And she moved toward the window. Martin had slumped further down till his knuckles quite brushed the rug. His angry little eyes, glowing with baffled rage, were fixed on Dee Dee. Slowly his lips peeled back, exposing every tooth in his head. "You!" he said in an ominous growl. Dee Dee paused, but only briefly. Then the enraged roar of a wild beast reverberated through the room. "You come back!" bellowed the infuriated mammoth slayer, and with one agile bound sprang to the window, seized Dee Dee, and slung her under one arm. Wheeling, he glared jealously at the shrinking Watt and reached for Erica. In a trice, he had the struggling forms of both girls captive, one under each arm. His wicked little eyes glanced from one to the other. Then, playing no favorites, he bit each quickly on the ear. "Nick!" Erica cried. "How dare you?" "Mine!" Mammoth Slayer informed her hoarsely. "You bet I am," Erica said, "but that works both ways. Put down that hussy you've got under your other arm." Mammoth Slayer was observed to eye Dee Dee doubtfully. "Well," Erica said tartly, "make up your mind." "Both," said the uncivilized playwright. "Yes." "No," Erica said. "Yes," Dee Dee breathed in an entirely new tone. Limp as a dish rag, the lovely creature hung from Martin's arm and gazed up at her captor with idolatrous admiration. "Oh, you hussy," Erica said. "What about St. Cyr?" "Him?" Dee Dee said scornfully. "He hasn't got a thing, the sissy. I'll never look at him again." She turned her adoring gaze back to Martin. "Puh!" the latter grunted, tossing Dee Dee into Watt's lap. "Yours, keep her!" He grinned approvingly at Erica. "Strong she, better." Both Watt and Dee Dee remained motionless, staring at Martin. "You," he said, thrusting a finger at Dee Dee. "You stay with him, huh?" He indicated Watt. Dee Dee nodded in slavish adoration. "You sign contract?" Nod. Martin looked significantly into Watt's eyes. He extended his hand. "The contract release," Erica explained, upside down. "Give it to him before he pulls your head off." Slowly, Watt pulled the contract release from his pocket and held it out, but Martin was already shambling toward the window. Erica reached back hastily and snatched the document. "That was a wonderful act," she told Nick as they reached the street. "Put me down now. We can find a cab some—"
"No act," Martin growled. "Real till tomorrow. After that," he shrugged. "But tonight, Mammoth Slayer."
He attempted to climb a palm tree, changed his mind, and shambled on, carrying the now pensive Erica. But it was not until a police car drove past that Erica screamed. "I'll bail you out tomorrow," Erica told Mammoth Slayer, struggling between two large patrolmen. Her words were drowned in an infuriated bellow. Thereafter, events blurred, to solidify again for the irate Mammoth Slayer only when he was thrown in a cell, where he picked himself up with a threatening roar.
"I kill!"
he announced, seizing the bars.
"Arr!"
"Two in one night," said a bored voice, moving away outside. "Both in Bel Air, too. Think they're hopped up? We couldn't get a coherent story out of either one." The bars shook. An annoyed voice from one of the bunks said to "Shut up!" and added that there had already been enough trouble from nincompoops without... Here it paused, hesitated, and uttered a shrill, sharp, piercing cry. Oh shit, she may not be able to bail him out in the morning. Now he's in for murder and assault. Music by Alexander Stamenkovic, as found on Jamendo. The opening and closing music is by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. No claim is made to the underlying story. Copyright of this reading is to Julie Hoverson and Reality Productions, 2014. And it is released under a Creative Commons non-attribution share-alike non-commercial license. Contact us at www.19nocturneboulevard.com for other productions from Reality Productions and Julie Hoverson.